Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. It's a world of mud, hunger, and deeply itchy wool. A world where the phrase hard life doesn't even begin to cover it. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on what it was really like to live as a medieval peasant. Not the romanticized serfs from fairy tale books, not the background extras at a Renaissance fair. The real deal. The ones who worked the land, served the lords, dodged diseases, and woke up every day to the same question. How do I survive this? But before we jump into a world of thatched roofs and questionable pottage, I'd love it if you could take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments what time it is where you are right now. It's always fascinating to see where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum in the background, and let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey, the harsh truth about medieval peasants' daily life. Prepare yourself. It's uncomfortable, it's dark, it's incredibly damp, and it will definitely make you appreciate your socks, because for the next couple hours, you're going to live through the life of a medieval peasant, from the itchy straw mattress to the sour beer breakfast, the back-breaking labor, the flea-infested bedding, the brutal punishments, the cold, the fear, the noise, the rot, and everything in between. This won't be a lecture. It's a journey. You're going to wake up in that world. You're going to wear it, smell it, feel it, crawl across your skin. And by the end, if I've done this right, you'll be falling asleep more grateful than ever for running water and central heating. We'll walk through every part of peasant life, one exhausting hour at a time. No fairy tales, no clean tunics, just the raw historical truth, wrapped in the quiet tone of bedtime storytelling. So lie back, breathe slow, and remember, no matter how stressful your day has been, at least you weren't born in 1325, with one pair of shoes and a boss who collects taxes with a sword. Let's begin. You wake up to the sound of something dripping. Not rain, not a faucet. There's no plumbing. It's the slow, deliberate rhythm of water squeezing through a hole in your thatched roof and landing precisely on your forehead. You shift, groggy, reaching to wipe it away, only to discover your blanket is soaked too. It's not even dawn yet, but your straw mattress has already given up the ghost. The air is cold, not just chilly, cold the way old bones ache before a storm. The kind of cold that creeps in while you sleep and refuses to leave, burrowing into your clothes, your joints, your lungs. And in this one-room mud and stick house, there's no escaping it. You're lying on what passes for a bed. It's not a mattress, it's a sack, burlap, stuffed with old straw, mouldy hay, and possibly some moss if you were lucky enough to grab some before the pigs got to it. It's flattened from years of use and smells like damp earth, livestock, and the faint ammonia tinge of mouse urine. Beneath you, the floor is just dirt. Compacted, uneven, cold dirt. Maybe someone threw down rushes a few weeks ago, maybe not. Either way, they're rotting now, mingling with old soot, spilled beer, and whatever your younger sibling or one of the chickens did in the night. Yes, chickens. You don't sleep alone, you never do. Beside you, your younger brother's foot is pressed into your ribs. Your sister's hair is tangled with yours. Your mother is snoring softly, somewhere near the hearth. And the family goat, because yes, the goat sleeps inside too, is breathing against your shoulder, warm but undeniably goat-smelling. This is what bedroom means in your world. A pile of bodies trying to stay warm, sharing space with animals, fleas, and each other's coughs. Privacy? It doesn't exist. Not for peasants. Not for you. There are no walls separating anything. You sleep, eat, argue, give birth, and die, all in the same smoky, cramped room. And the smoke? That's everywhere. Even with the fire long since burned out, the air still hangs thick with it. It's in your clothes, your hair, your lungs. Your throat feels raw. Your eyes sting slightly. There's no chimney, just a hole in the ceiling where the worst of the smoke escapes, if the wind cooperates. If not, it just settles back down to mingle with the fog of your own breath. It's still dark, but the day is beginning. The first hint of light creeps through the hide-covered window, little more than a scrap of animal skin stretched over a wooden frame. It doesn't open. It barely lets in light, but it keeps out the worst of the wind, which is more than you can say for the rest of the house. The walls, made of wattle and daub a lattice of wood, slathered with a charming mix of mud, straw, and animal dung, are cracked in places. You can see the frost blooming where the cold has slipped through. Your breath clouds the air with every exhale. You sit up slowly, your back already aching. You're 12, maybe 14 years old, but your joints creak like someone 3 times your age. You slept in the same tunic you wore yesterday and the day before. And unless there's a miracle today, you'll sleep in it again tonight. You scratch your scalp. It itches constantly. You've got lice. Everyone does. Even the Lord's family up at the manor house. No one talks about it. It's just part of the landscape of medieval skin, along with the occasional boil, rash, or inexplicable patch of fungus. You reach for your shoes. They're not by the fire, they never are. If you're lucky, they're by the wall, stiff with moisture and caked in yesterday's mud. If you're not lucky, someone else grabbed them. They only have one pair too. You check under the bench. Nothing. Someone probably slept in them to keep their feet warm. Barefoot it island. You step carefully because that floor you slept on. It's also your toilet, your dining room, and your storage. You try not to wake your mother as you tiptoe toward the door, stepping over a sleeping cousin and nearly knocking over a clay jug of water. You're thirsty, but not desperate. That water hasn't been boiled yet, and your last encounter with unboiled water cost you 3 days of uncontrollable bodily regret and some very colourful dreams. The door creaks on its leather hinges as you open it. The outside air hits you in the face like a slap, sharp, bitter, real. The yard, if you can call the patch of churned mud and chicken droppings a yard, is still and quiet, but the smells aren't. They hit you all at once. Manure, smoke, wet straw, rotting cabbage, life, basically. You breathe it in because you have to. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows. Not your rooster, you don't own one. Your neighbor's. He has 3. Your family hasn't had a rooster since the plague took half the village and left everyone too afraid to trade livestock. You hear someone coughing a few doors down. Deep, chesty, wet. You hope it's not the consumption, but it probably island. You make a mental note to breathe out when you pass their house. Somewhere behind you, inside the hut, someone has begun to stir. Your mother calling softly, the baby whining. Your father's voice grumbling through a mouthful of sleep. He'll be up soon, and when he is, the day begins in full. But for now, for this quiet, cold moment, you're awake. Awake in the middle of the 14th century. No mattress, no running water, no walls, just you, your family, your goat, and a world of mud and obligation waiting for your bare feet. You pick up a bucket because that's your next stop. Water needs fetching, fire needs relighting, and breakfast, if you can call it that, needs to be scraped together from the crumbs of last night's boiled disaster. Welcome to your life. You're not royalty. You're not a knight. You're not even a stable hand. You're a medieval peasant. And your day is just beginning. Your stomach growls before you even step back inside. Not out of hunger. Not exactly. more like the echo of hunger. That dull, hollow feeling that never really leaves a quiet gnawing you've learned to ignore, the same way you ignore the wind blowing through the wall cracks or the flea bites on your thighs. Food is coming, sort of, back inside the hut. The fire is being coaxed back to life by your mother, who's bent over the hearth with the practiced movements of someone who's done this every morning for decades. She's not speaking, not yet. No one talks much in the morning unless they have to. Words take energy, and energy is in short supply. She pokes at the smouldering ash, carefully adding thin twigs, a piece of dried peat, and eventually a scrap of wood too precious to waste but too wet to catch easily. Smoke puffs upward like a sleepy ghost. The room fills with its bitter scent, and your eyes sting slightly. But you don't mind. Smoke means warmth. It means the water might boil. It means food. On the hearthstone, yesterday's pottage still sits in a cracked ceramic pot, more sludge than soup. Thick, greyish, with a few unidentifiable lumps of what used to be root vegetables. You can already smell it. Sour, earthy, with the faint hint of spoiled cabbage. She scrapes it with a spoon, stirs in a little water, maybe a pinch of salt if you're lucky, and sets it near the embers. That's breakfast. That's dinner. That's probably tomorrow's breakfast too. In the corner, your older brother is tearing a hunk from a coarse brown loaf rye bread so dense it might legally qualify as a building material. The crust is cracked, and the inside is dry, but it's bread. Barely. The flour was mixed with ground peas, maybe some mashed beans, and, as rumor has it, the sweepings from the mill floor. You chew it slowly, because biting down too hard means chipping a tooth on a grain of grit. Everyone's had that happen. There's no dentist, just suffering. You wash it down with ale. Yes, ale. Not because you're trying to get a buzz before dawn, but because it's safer than the water. The river is filthy. The well water is questionable. The last time someone drank straight from the stream, they were buried 2 days later. Weak ale, brewed at home in small batches, is your only reliable liquid. It's warm, slightly sour, and has the faint tang of mouldy barley, but it won't kill you. Usually, even children drink it, even babies. There is no age restriction in a world where survival outranks sobriety. The alcohol is low, but the calories are critical. And the bubbles, well, that's just a bonus. You don't eat eggs. You can't afford to lose a chicken. You don't eat meat unless someone's animal dies or the Lord throws a feast and lets the peasants have the scraps. Cheese is a dream. Fruit is seasonal and mostly fermented into something vaguely resembling wine. Butter, maybe once a month, if someone's cow feels particularly generous. You don't eat to feel full. You eat to not faint. And now, with breakfast choking your stomach into reluctant motion, it's time to attend to the other part of the morning ritual. Cleaning yourself. Sort of. There is no bathroom. There is no toilet. There is no toothbrush. There is no bathtub, except in your imagination, and in stories told by travelers who swear that in France, people soak in barrels with herbs and oils like they're gods. You, however, walk barefoot to the edge of the village, holding your breath as you pass the dung pile. You squat in a spot that looks slightly less trodden than the rest. Try not to fall over, and do your business with a level of speed and discretion you've mastered since childhood. If it's a particularly windy morning, you hope no one else is nearby though. Frankly, everyone's seen everything. Privacy is for nobility. To clean yourself? A handful of straw, maybe moss, maybe a scrap of fabric that's been used too many times already. Toilet paper hasn't been invented yet, and your hands, well, let's just say you wash them if you can find clean water. If not, you wipe them on your tunic and keep moving. Back home, you attempt to wash your face in a wooden basin filled with cold water, drawn from the well before dawn. It's icy, and the shock wakes you up more than any caffeine ever could. You splash your face, rub your teeth with a twig, not a toothbrush, a literal twig. Maybe dipped in salt if you're feeling fancy. Your gums bleed sometimes, but so does everyone else's. Soap? Technically, yes. Realistically, no. It's expensive, made of animal fat and lye, and reserved for the rare yearly bath, not your daily grime. More often, you scrub yourself with ashes or sand abrasive, sure, but effective in a medieval sort of way. Your hair is rarely washed. It's too much trouble, too much water, too much chill. If it starts to smell, you tie it up or rub in some herbs. Rosemary, if you're lucky, mud, if you're not. Fleas don't care either way. They live on you now. You've named a few. One might be a night. Your clothes? They've been on your back for weeks, possibly months. They are scratchy, made of homespun wool, and shaped more by wear and grime than by any tailoring. Washing them is an ordeal. You'd have to haul water, heat it, scrub the cloth with lye or ashes, then hang them to dry, all while not wearing them, which presents its own problems. So you don't wash them, you just let them develop character. They now have personality, a scent, a history, a stiffness that could challenge wood. By the time the sun is fully risen, the fire is going strong again, the pottage is bubbling, and you're standing barefoot in the corner, trying not to think about how badly your tunic itches or how cold your toes are. And this is how you start your day. No shower, no coffee, no me time. Just yesterday's clothes, a chunk of rye brick, warm beer, and the faint, unshakable smell of smoke and sheep dung. You're as clean as you'll get. You're as fed as you're going to be. And now it's time to get to work. Because if you don't move quickly, someone else will take your spot in the field. And in medieval life, that might just be the difference between surviving this winter or not. There's a certain kind of honesty in a medieval peasant's wardrobe. No brands, no trends, no seasonal collections. Just two goals: don't freeze, and don't show too much skin while freezing. You have exactly one outfit, maybe two if your family's slightly better off, but chances are you're wearing the same thing today that you wore yesterday, and the day before that, and probably the day before that as well. And it shows. Your tunic is made of coarse, homespun wool, not the soft kind that modern catalogues gush over. No, this wool has the texture of a carpet that fought back. It scratches your arms, your sides, your thighs. It holds on to, smells the way a miser holds on to coins. Smoke, sweat, wet hay, animal grease, it all lives in the fabric now. You've tried beating it clean on a rock. It only got angrier. The color? Brownish, or grayish, or a faded, stained version of something that once aspired to be green. Nothing bright, nothing dyed. Color is for the wealthy, who can afford things like woad, madder, or indigo. You don't have money for plants that aren't edible, so your tunic blends in with the landscape, earthy, muddy, anonymous. Underneath, if you're lucky, a linen shift. Thin, fragile, and already patched half a dozen times. If you're not lucky, which is most days, nothing at all. The wool scratches everything, but you've gotten used to that. Sort of. There are no socks. Just strips of cloth wrapped around your legs for warmth. They slide down halfway through the day, bunching around your ankles like sad little surrender flags. You rewrap them, mutter something, and keep going. Shoes? Technically, yes. Realistically, sort of. They're made of raw leather, hand-stitched, and about as waterproof as a sponge. When they're new, they're stiff. When they're old, they fall apart in the mud and need to be tied together with string or gut. Most of the time, you go barefoot anyway, especially in summer, when the fields are soft and you need to feel your footing. But winter? That's different. Winter turns your shoes into frozen bricks. If they've gotten wet, which they have, they stiffen overnight and tear the skin from your heels in the morning. You wear them anyway, because frostbite kills faster than blisters. There's a cloak hanging by the door, scratchy, heavy, smelling faintly of mildew and sheep. It's the family's best one, which means it gets passed around. Whoever's working furthest from the hearth gets to wear it that day. If it's your turn, congratulations. If not, maybe you can fashion something from an old grain sack. It won't be warm, but it might cut the wind. And now, once you're dressed, such as it is, you step back into your house and look around. Because clothing may be a struggle, but shelter is the ongoing battle. You live in a croft, or a hut, or a hovel, depending on who's judging. One room, dirt floor, thatch roof. The walls are made of wattle and daub lattice of woven wooden slats covered in a blend of mud, straw, and animal dung. Dung, not because you're trying to be gross, but because dung is sticky, insulating, and always available. A miracle material for people with nothing else. The walls don't keep the wind out. They just slow it down. On bad days, they tremble. On worse days, they weep. Cold air slips through every crack, dancing around your ankles like a smug ghost. There's one window, maybe. It's not glass. Glass is a luxury found in churches and castles. Yours is covered in stretched animal bladder or oiled cloth. Maybe a wooden shutter you can close against the rain. It doesn't keep out the cold, it just dims it slightly. The roof? That's thatch bundles of reeds or straw layered together and tied with twine. It leaks. Constantly. Birds nest in it. Sometimes rats, too. If you hear scratching above your head, you just hope they're not mating again. If a cat lives in your home, congratulations. You now have pest control. You also have fleas, but that was true already. The floor, as mentioned, is dirt. Some families spread fresh rushes or straw to keep it dry, or at least drier. Over time, those rushes rot, mix with mud, and become a kind of living compost carpet. It squelches, it smells, it supports a rich ecosystem of bugs, fungi, and occasionally a lost spoon from last Christmas. In winter, the cold comes from above, below, and inside. You wrap yourself in layers. You sleep close to the hearth. You huddle with your family and animals in the same room, not for comfort, but for body heat. The pig might smell, but it radiates like a stove. There's no ceiling, just exposed beams, blackened from decades of smoke. The rafters are low enough that tall men bump their heads and children dare each other to climb and hang. You did it once. You fell. You still limp slightly. Furniture minimal, otoble, o bench, majbel stol. Everything is wooden, uneven, hand-carved by someone who had more enthusiasm than skill. Nails are expensive, so things are tied, wedged, or simply leaning on something sturdier. Your bed, such as it is a wooden frame filled with straw. Lumpy, pest-ridden straw. The blanket is wool. The pillow, if it exists, is stuffed with moss. You've named the biggest lump left hip ache. Storage, crates, hooks, a shelf if you're fancy. Everything you own fits into a space smaller than a modern closet. There's no closet, just pegs. Your tunic hangs beside your neighbor's. Sometimes you mix them up. There's a hearth in the center of the room. It's the heart of the home, the only source of light, warmth, and food. But there's no chimney. The smoke rises, hesitates, and then coats the rafters, the walls, your lungs. You cough constantly. Everyone does. Black phlegm is a way of life. Above the fire, a pot hangs on a crude iron hook. It holds pottage, soup, stew, the same meal, endlessly reheated, endlessly diluted, endlessly disappointing. You don't complain. It's warm. It's wet. It keeps you alive. Your house isn't clean, Not by modern standards. It's dusty, moldy, infested, but it's not neglected. You sweep, you scrub, you patch leaks, you do everything you can. But the materials are crude. The tools are simple. And time is for surviving, not decorating. And yet, this is home. This is where you were born. This is where you sleep. This is where you might give birth, where your parents will die, where your children will grow. It smells like smoke and onions and wool and feet, but it also smells like your people, your place, your piece of the world. Outside, the wind howls through the fields. Inside, the fire crackles. A spoon stirs. A child laughs. The goat farts. Life continues. And as you pull your cloak tighter and step out into the frostbitten morning to begin another day, you know this much. Your clothes may be rough. Your house may be humble, but they're yours for now. The sun is barely up. A faint grey light spills across the fields, soft and wet and already cold. You'd like to sit by the fire just a little longer, maybe take one more sip of warm beer, maybe delay the inevitable. But in medieval peasant life, rest is not a luxury. It's a liability. If you're not working, you're not surviving. And if you're not surviving, well then you're just feeding the rats earlier than expected. You step out into the morning. The mud greets you first. It's always there, always damp, always ankle deep and unbothered by your ambitions. Your feet sink with every step. The fields are waiting. So is the plough. So is the landlord's quota. You are a tenant, which is a fancy word for someone who works land they don't own and owes more than they ever make. The land belongs to the Lord. The tools belong to the manor. The grain, the eggs, the wood you harvest, those too are his. You just borrow them, work them, and hope he leaves you enough to survive. You're not paid in money. You're paid in permission to live on the land, to grow your crops, to not be evicted, imprisoned, or accidentally trampled during a noble's hunting party. Your first job of the day, tending the fields. Your master and your tomb. You grab a wooden hoe. It's heavy, splintered, worn. It was probably old when your grandfather used it. There's no metal tip, just wood, blunt and awkward. Your hands are already blistered from yesterday. You adjust your grip. The soil is stiff from the cold. You have to break it, inch by inch. Dig, turn, pull, repeat. If it's spring, you're planting barley, rye, maybe some beans. If it's summer, you're weeding. If it's autumn, you're harvesting. If it's winter, you're praying the stored grain holds out and that the next planting season doesn't kill you. There's no tractor, no irrigation, no fertilizer beyond what your animals drop on the ground. You farm by hand, with tools made from tree limbs and curses. The work is slow, bone-grinding and unforgiving. Your back aches within minutes, your knees creak. The sun, when it shows up, scorches your neck. When it hides, the wind tears at your sleeves. And still, you keep going, because if you don't, the land doesn't care. The landlord doesn't care. The weather doesn't care. The crop will fail, and you'll go hungry again. The manor's demands. You don't just farm your own little strip of land. You also owe labour to the manor, your lord's estate. It's called corvée. Unpaid, unavoidable, and often unbearable. Some days you're sent to the Lord's fields to plough his grain. Other days you're building his fences, digging his ditches, chopping his wood. It doesn't matter what your own family needs. If the reeve says you're needed at the manor, you go, or else. And if you thought your own tools were bad, wait until you're assigned the manor's shared ones, warped shovels, broken wheelbarrows, carts with one wheel that spins and one that squeaks like a dying mouse. You keep your head down. You don't complain. Complaining gets noticed. And being noticed? That's dangerous. The reeve is always watching. He's a peasant too, but he's the Lord's chosen one, the middleman, half overseer, half spy. He reports who's working, who's not, who's late, who spoke out of turn. If he doesn't like you, you work twice as hard, for half the rations. Tools of the trade. Pain. There are no gloves, no boots, no safety standards. You cut your hand on a sickle. You wrap it in a rag and keep swinging. You twist your ankle in a ditch. You limp for a week. The work doesn't stop. You get a splinter so deep it turns black. It festers. Maybe you survive. Maybe your hand swells and you lose a finger. Injuries aren't treated. They're endured. If something breaks, you keep going. If something bleeds, you tie it up. If something gets infected, well, now's a good time to start praying. Even the animals work harder than they should. Oxen pull your plough. Cows provide milk. Chickens give eggs unless they die of cold, predators, or some mysterious illness that turns their beaks green. If something dies, you bury it and keep going. You can't afford grief. Grief is a luxury. Survival is the job, other labor. Whatever needs doing. If you're a man, your days are full of agriculture, unless you're called to mend roads, build dikes, clear forests, or fix fences. If the manor's oven breaks, you fix it. If a tree falls across the path to the church, you chop it. If a war is coming and the Lord calls for levies, you march. Sword or not. If you're a woman, you're working too. Spinning wool, weaving, mending clothes, fetching water, feeding animals, gathering firewood, brewing ale, making bread, cleaning, cooking, parenting, birthing, nursing, and then doing field work on top of all that. The idea of women not working is a myth for people with castles and courtyards. Here, everyone works, every day, or they die. Children start young feeding hens, collecting eggs, learning to plant seeds, scaring off crows, helping their parents. By age 7, they're contributing. By age 12, they're expected to pull their weight. Childhood ends early when hunger starts early. Lunch break? Kind of. You get a break around midday. Break is generous. You sit on a rock, chew a piece of dry bread that tastes like sawdust and old dirt, and sip lukewarm ale from a cracked wooden cup. You stare at the ground. You don't talk much. Your hands are shaking from the cold, or from exhaustion. You're not sure which anymore. You wonder how much more there is to do today. You try not to think about tomorrow. You get back up. You work until you drop. Evening comes slowly. The sun drips across the horizon like honey from a broken spoon. It's beautiful. You don't notice. Your hands are raw. Your knees burn. Your head pounds. Your muscles ache in that deep, permanent way that doesn't go away with rest, because you never get enough rest. You finish your final task. Stack the last sheaf of barley, tie off the ox, sling the tool over your back, and now you walk home, not triumphantly, not leisurely, just home, step by muddy step. And tomorrow, the same. This is life. There's no weekend, no vacation, no you time. There's planting, harvesting, weeding, repairing, feeding, obeying, and pain. Always pain in your knees, in your back, in your stomach, in your spirit. If you're lucky, the harvest will be good this year. If you're not, you'll bury a child. Or two. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe yourself. But you don't complain. You keep going because no one else is coming to help. And in this world, a peasant's life is hard, short, and unforgiving. But it's still yours until it isn't. From the moment you're born, through every mistake you make, until the final breath leaves your cracked lips, the church is there, watching, recording, judging. Your life is structured around the liturgical calendar, not just Sunday Mass everything. There are feast days, fast days, saints' days, holy days, market days blessed by bishops, harvest days with prayers for good weather, and entire seasons like Lent where joy is discouraged and food is restricted. If you're caught celebrating too enthusiastically during Advent, you might be accused of heresy, or worse, irreverence. Even things like sex, singing, and dancing have rules. Specific days it's allowed, specific positions, specific intentions. Even if you're married, especially if you're married, God is always watching. And if he isn't, his priest island, you can't read the Bible that's for Latin scholars and clergy. You hear it instead during Sunday services, spoken from the pulpit by a priest who half mumbles through the sermon, probably as hungry and exhausted as you. Still, you go, because if you don't, that's noticed. That's dangerous. Fear of hell is a daily companion. You don't just fear disease, wolves, or starvation. You fear hell. And not the abstract kind. You've seen paintings, heard stories. Hell is real, vivid, and grotesque, a boiling pit of torture, with demons flaying your skin, boiling your intestines, and poking you forever with red-hot pitchforks. For what? For missing confession, for thinking impure thoughts, for accidentally enjoying something too much. The path to salvation is narrow. One wrong step, lust, pride, gluttony, questioning the church, and it's straight down into the fire. You try to be good, you try to confess, but the rules keep changing. Sometimes the priest says indulgences can help. Sometimes he says they're not enough. Either way, you keep paying. Mass, ritual and relief. Sunday Mass is your one guaranteed break from labor, but it's not restful. You wake early, walk miles in the cold, stand for hours on a stone floor, and listen to Latin you don't understand. You cross yourself when others do. You bow, kneel, repeat. You watch the priest elevate the host and hope it works. Hope that wafer becomes Christ, that your sins are heard, that your soul is safe. The church smells of smoke, incense, wet wool, and old wood. It's the only building in the village made of stone. It feels holy. It feels terrifying. Some weeks, a traveling friar might come through, preaching about damnation, waving relics, or urging you to join a pilgrimage, a journey to holy lands that you cannot afford. Still, you listen because maybe, just maybe, the Virgin Mary is listening back. You light candles. You whisper prayers. You make the sign of the cross again and again and again. The devil is everywhere. You don't just fear hell, you fear demons. They're not abstract ideas. They're everywhere. In the woods, in the shadows, in your neighbor's cow when it suddenly goes mad, in your sick child's fever dream. If your harvest fails, maybe it's not just bad weather. Maybe someone cursed you. Maybe an old woman whispered the wrong words near your field. Maybe you forgot to bless the tools, witches are real or so they say. Not the cauldron-stirring cartoon kind, but people who make pacts with the devil. They cause disease, spoil milk, call storms. The church says they're servants of Satan. But sometimes they're also just the local herbalist who knows too much about mushrooms. You're suspicious. You're superstitious. Because you have to be. You live in a world where evil has rules, and God is watching, but so is everything else. Magic, charms, and hedge priests. You believe in God, but you also believe in magic. Not the stage kind, the practical kind. A charm sewn into your child's blanket to protect them from night spirits. A wax figure placed near the door to ward off disease. A small stone blessed by a traveling monk and hidden in your satchel just in case. You spit 3 times over your shoulder when you see a black dog. You knock on wood, not because it's polite, but because it wakes the tree spirits who ward off bad luck. You hang dried herbs over the hearth to keep away fevers. You leave milk at the edge of the forest, not for people, but for whatever else lives out there. Some priests call these practices sinful. Others turn a blind eye, because even they know, when your world is full of unknown dangers, belief is armor, and if you don't wear it, you're exposed. Death is always close. You don't plan your future. You prepare for your death, not because you're morbid, but because you know it's coming. Could be next winter, could be this week. You've seen death. You've smelled it. The old man down the lane, gone from a cough. The baby 2 doors down, fevered and gone by dawn. And if you die unconfessed, you risk purgatory, or worse, hell. That's why you keep rosary beads under your pillow. That's why your mother mutters the Ave Maria in her sleep. That's why you really try to follow the church's rules, even when they contradict each other. Because what if this really is the test? Heaven is there somewhere. You don't think about heaven often. It feels too far, too clean, too bright. You hope for it quietly. But your idea of heaven isn't clouds and harps. It's a place with warmth, food, and no suffering. Maybe a bed that doesn't itch. Maybe your grandmother's arms again. Maybe no cold. You've heard the saints live there. You've heard angels sing. You wonder if peasants are allowed in. You hope so. Because if this life isn't worth something, what was the point of all this pain? So you pray. Always. Before meals, after meals, when it rains, when it doesn't rain, when you wake up, when someone coughs blood, when the wind sounds like a cry, you pray with your hands, your words, your actions. You pray through obedience, through fear, through tradition, because in this world, belief isn't optional. It's not philosophical. It's survival, and it may be the only power you have left. It's evening now. You're back from the fields, exhausted, aching in places you didn't know had nerves. Your hands feel more like wood than flesh. Your knees crack like dry branches. You're not hungry. You're starving. But don't get excited. Dinner isn't a feast. It's a continuation of your survival strategy, warm, thick, bland, and just enough to keep you upright. You sit by the hearth. Someone stirs the pot. It's the same pot that's been going for days now, the eternal stew. It never empties. It just gets added to. Water, barley, cabbage, if someone traded well. A turnip, if someone was lucky. Bones, skin, whatever was scavenged from an old chicken no one talks about. You sip carefully. A bit of grit crunches in your teeth. You hope it was barley. You pretend it was barley. The peasant menu. Dirt optional, variety rare. Your meals revolve around 3 things. Bread, ale, pottage. Bread, of course, is the foundation. Heavy, coarse, usually dark rye, mixed with whatever filler you have: peas, beans, sometimes actual flour if you've been generous with your tithes. The crust is hard. You don't chew it so much as negotiate with it. Sometimes you soften it in your stew. Sometimes you soak it in your ale. Sometimes you just gnaw until you forget that gums aren't supposed to bleed. Ale is your beverage of choice. But don't imagine medieval Oktoberfest. This is weak ale called small beer, barely alcoholic, cloudy, sometimes warm, sometimes sour. Brewed at home, left to ferment wherever there's room. It's not good. It's just not poisonous. And that's what makes it valuable. Pottage is your lifeline. It's not a recipe. It's a concept. Grains boiled into mush. Add whatever grows nearby or hasn't rotted yet. Leeks, onions, wild herbs, nettles, or garlic if you know where to forage. Maybe bean. Maybe a scrap of dried meat if you had something die recently. Meat? Rare. Very rare. You don't kill your chickens, they lay eggs. You don't kill your pig, it's your winter larder on legs. You eat meat when something dies of old age, disease, or gets hit by a cart, in which case everyone celebrates. And by celebrates, we mean boil everything edible and argue over who gets the feet. Dairy exists, but it's precious. Cheese is labor-intensive. Milk spoils fast. You might get some butter if the cow is in a good mood, and no one else has claimed it. Fruit? Only in season, and mostly fermented into something vaguely alcoholic because that's safer than letting it rot. Vegetables? You eat them all, even the bitter ones, especially the bitter ones, because your options are bitter or nothing. And yet, somehow, there's still comfort in the warmth of it all. The stew simmers, the bread crackles, the hearth glows. It's not delicious, but it's hot. And in this life, hot food feels like mercy. Table manners, more like floor manners. You don't sit at a table, you sit on the floor, or on a bench if someone's feeling fancy. The bowl is shared. Spoons are wooden, usually carved by hand, sometimes by someone who really should have stuck to farming. You don't get your own plate. You take what you can when the spoon comes your way. Eat fast. Someone else is always hungrier. Salt is rare. Sugar? Unheard of. Pepper? That's a spice from the East and might as well be unicorn dust. You eat with your fingers when the spoon breaks. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve. You wipe your sleeve on your knee. Everyone does. No one comments. Cleanliness is a dream. Warmth is a blessing. Fullness is a miracle. You thank God anyway. Feasts. Rare and rough. Once in a while, maybe a wedding, a baptism, or a holiday, the village has a feast. That word feels too generous. But it's a celebration. The Lord might give out extra grain or let a few animals be slaughtered. There's music badly played but enthusiastically performed. There's dancing, half hopping, half avoiding the mud. Someone always drinks too much and falls in the fire. Everyone pretends not to notice. If there's a pig roast, the air smells like hope. If there's honeyed mead, people smile until they pass out. Children race. Dogs steal bones. Someone sings a song older than memory. You laugh. Once. Then, back to the fields. Feasts are a break in the suffering. A reminder that for a night, you're allowed to feel human. And then they end. Always. The alehouse. Medieval Netflix. Sometimes, when you're lucky and you've bartered well, you go to the tavern. It's dark. It's loud. It smells like fermented regret. But it's not home. And that's the point. The alewife pours cloudy beer from a wooden cask. You sit on a splintery bench. Someone's playing a lute badly. Someone else is telling a story you've already heard. You drink, you nod, you forget for a minute. Gossip flows faster than the beer. Someone's cow gave birth to a two-headed calf. Someone else saw a ghost in the mill. The reeve is definitely cheating on his wife. The priest drinks too much sacramental wine. That sort of thing. You laugh, but carefully. You never know who's listening. Fights break out. Arguments over land, sheep, inheritance, or someone looking the wrong way during Mass. Knives flash. Blood spills. Someone gets dragged out. No one mentions it the next day. Music, storytelling, and not crying. Entertainment, such as it is, comes in small doses. Music is played on hand-carved flutes, fiddles, and drums, made from sheep gut and stretched skin. The tunes are simple, repetitive, often off-key, but when the fire is lit and the drink is flowing, they sound like magic. Stories are your Netflix, your news, your therapy. Tales of saints, of devils, of knights, of fools. Sometimes they're true, usually they aren't. But you listen anyway, because the world beyond the village is a mystery, And mysteries are comforting when your own life is so predictable. Games are played with rocks, sticks, dice made from bone, or just chasing chickens for fun. Children laugh until they fall asleep in the hay. Adults sit quietly, nursing mugs and aches. You share a smile. You hum along. You remember who you are and who you're not. Festivals. Short bursts of joy. The church allows some days of celebration. Saints' days, holy feasts. Pagan festivals rebranded with Christian names. You dance. You sing. You jump over fires. You dress up as animals and chase spirits out of the village. It's loud. It's chaotic. It's fleeting, but it's yours. You drink until your head spins. You laugh until you cry. You cry until the laughter returns. And then, as always, you go back to work. Because in the medieval world, entertainment is not indulgence. It's not pleasure. It's survival. A little joy. A little noise. To remind you that life isn't always labor. Sometimes, even the mud can sparkle, if only for an hour. There's a cough in the dark. At first, it's soft. Then it gets louder, wetter, closer. You hear it echo through the hut, like a warning bell no one dares ring. It could be your mother, your brother, the baby in the corner. Someone's lungs are working too hard. And that means trouble. Because in your world, sickness isn't an inconvenience. It's a sentence. You're never truly healthy. Let's be honest. You don't really remember what it feels like to feel well. Your nose is always stuffy in winter. Your stomach always hurts in spring. Your joints ache when it rains. You're either too hot, too cold, too tired, too itchy, or all of the above. Children constantly battle fevers. Adults limp with untreated injuries. Old people rarely exist. You've seen more funerals than birthdays. The word chronic doesn't exist yet, but the experience does. You just call it normal life. What kills you isn't always dramatic. People don't always die of dramatic plague or battlefield wound. They die of toothaches, of broken bones, of stepping on the wrong nail. They die of burns from cooking fires. They die of diarrhea. They die in childbirth, often two at once. A small cut turns black. A fever doesn't break. A cough won't stop. You bury them, and then you carry on. There's no emergency room, no antibiotics, no hope, really, unless you're rich. And you're not. The village healer and her box of wonders. When someone gets sick, you call for the local healer. She's not a doctor. There are no doctors here. She's an older woman usually who knows her herbs, knows the bodies in the village, and knows what death smells like before it arrives. She brings dried flowers, pungent roots, bitter powders. She grinds things in a mortar that's older than most buildings. She whispers prayers while applying poultices. She ties charms to the rafters. She burns leaves to purify the air. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, she tells you the truth. It's in God's hands now, medicine, if you can call it that. There's no germ theory, no understanding of bacteria. Illness is thought to come from bad air, imbalanced humors, divine punishment, or witchcraft. The most common treatments? Bloodletting. Because if you're sick, clearly your blood is misbehaving, so you cut it out, literally, using a knife, a razor, or leeches. It makes you dizzy. Sometimes it kills you. But hey, at least the theory makes sense to someone. Purgatives. Drink this herb. It will clear your bowels, or your stomach, or both, rapidly, violently, repeatedly. Charms. A carved bone, a saint's relic, a fragment of cloth blessed by someone who definitely wasn't lying. Smoke fumigation. If a sickness is in the air, then maybe good-smelling smoke will drive it out. You burn herbs, you gag, you hope it works. Doctors exist in cities. But for you, a peasant, you couldn't afford their visit even if one stumbled into the village. And, honestly, they might just show up, shout the bile is too hot, and then stab you with a silver tube. Plague, the death that wears a cloak. You've heard the stories, the coughing, the black boils, the way people die within a day too, if they're lucky, the way the streets fill with wagons of corpses, the way priests walk through towns swinging incense and shouting last rites like it's a fire sale. You've heard of it. You hope it never comes, but deep down, you know it will, because it always does. No one survives forever. And when the plague comes, no one survives at all. Childbirth. Hope with a 50% mortality rate. If you're a woman, childbirth isn't a moment of joy, it's a moment of terror. A gamble with long odds. No painkillers, no clean tools, no idea what's going wrong when it starts to go wrong. You bleed, you scream, you pray. If you survive, you may do it again next year. If not, well, your baby might survive. Or not. Infant death is normal. You don't even name babies sometimes until they're a few months old, just in case. Hospitals? More. Like God's waiting room, hospitals do exist. But they aren't what you think. They're run by monks. They're quiet, cold, and full of people already dying. You go there to get prayed over, not cured. Sometimes you're given a blanket and a place to rest. Other times, you're given a bell to ring when death finally takes you. Fear of death is in every breath. You don't live in fear of if death will come. You fear when and how. Will it be quick? Will it be painful? Will you be alone? Will your soul be clean? You think about these things daily because every cough, every fever, every chill might be the one that sends you under the ground wrapped in sackcloth, buried beside someone you loved last week. You prepare for death like it's an appointment. You confess often. You wear a cross. You keep your will short because you don't have much. You talk to your children about where to bury you. You remember where your father is buried. You already know what your shroud will be made of, the same linen shirt you wore on your wedding day. Death isn't a thief in the night. It's a neighbor, a frequent visitor, sometimes unwelcome, sometimes kind. And yet, somehow, you live. You keep going. You work. You laugh sometimes. You eat what you can. You hold hands around the fire. You sing. You tell stories about people who lived long, healthy lives, even if none of you actually knew them. They sound like myths, but they give you hope. You survive, not because the world makes it easy, but because it demands it. Because even when death is whispering at the door, there's still a child to feed, a field to plow, a loaf to bake, a goat to chase, a prayer to mumble, a neighbor to bury. There's still something worth doing until there isn't. Women, backbone, beasts of burden, and barely noticed. If you're a woman, your job is everything no one else wants to do, plus everything that still has to be done after the field work is over. You wake before the Sunday, you go to sleep well after the fire has burned down. You cook, you clean, you mend, you wash, you patch the roof, you tend the garden, you gather firewood, you boil water, you chase children, you feed animals, you spin wool, you barter eggs, you prepare herbs, and you carry the entire household on your back. And then, just for good measure, you might give birth once every 2 years if your body can take it. You don't own land. You don't have legal independence. You can't vote, can't preach, can't sue, and depending on the region, can't even inherit without a male guardian. But without you, everything falls apart. You are the village's nurse, cook, midwife, tailor, therapist, wet nurse, cleaner, caretaker, and spiritual compass. You're never called these things, of course. You're just called woman. Your hands are always busy. Your hair is always tied back. Your clothes are always dirty. Your feet are always sore. But somehow, despite the labor, you find moments of strength, of community, of fierce, fire-lit laughter with the other women when the men have passed out from too much barley ale. You survive together. Marriage. More transaction than romance. You didn't fall in love, or if you did, it didn't matter. Marriage in this world is a matter of function, of land, of labor, of lineage. Your parents likely arranged it with the help of the priest or the manor steward long before you understood what it meant. Your husband might be kind. He might be cruel. He might be too tired to be either. The law considers you his property, more or less, but in the quiet corners of the household, it's often your voice that decides what gets eaten, what gets planted, and who gets scolded. You don't wear a ring. There's no honeymoon, just a blessing, a bed, and a dozen tasks waiting the next morning. Childbirth. No room for sentimentality. You get pregnant early. 14. 15. 16, if you're lucky. Your body isn't ready, but no one asks. There's no prenatal care, no hospital, just herbs, warm cloths, and the whispered prayers of the village midwife, who's likely just another older woman who's seen enough births to know what screams are normal and what screams mean death is coming. Childbirth is bloody, loud, dangerous, and profoundly lonely even when the whole room is crowded. You push until something breaks in your body or in your soul. Then you lie still, holding a child who might not cry, or one who does, or one who dies in the night anyway. You name them quickly, because you never know how long you'll have them. Children. Born into labor, children aren't cherished for their cuteness. They're cherished for their potential use. If you're a child, your job starts as soon as your legs work well enough to stand. At 5, you're fetching firewood. At 7, you're scaring birds away from the field. At 10, you're planting, sowing, herding, scrubbing, hauling. You don't go to school. There is no school. You don't read. You don't write. You barely know your birthday. But you can butcher a chicken, carry a pail of water, and spot a bad potato faster than most modern adults. Play exists, but it's woven between tasks. A game of tag while gathering kindling. A race to the stream while washing clothes. Laughter, yes, but tied to function. Leisure is never the priority. Mortality. Childhood is brief and often final. Half of all children don't make it to adulthood. They die of fever, of diarrhea, of injury, of cold, of malnutrition. Sometimes just of bad luck. There's no medicine, no safety net. If a child gets sick, the family waits, prays, and prepares a shroud. Grief is private, not because it hurts less, but because it happens so often. You mourn, then you return to work, because the surviving children still need to eat, and because the fields don't care about your tears. Family life. Messy, crowded, unavoidable. You live in a house with too many people and nowhere to go. There are no bedrooms, no privacy, no secrets. Everyone hears everything. The baby cries while your father snores. Your sister argues while your mother tries to cook. Someone always needs something. You sleep in a shared bed, or on the floor, or in a pile near the fire. You share blankets, stories, lice, illnesses, hopes. Love is not spoken. It's demonstrated. Through food, through sacrifice, through a hand brushing a child's forehead, through a mother going without so her child can eat, through a father mending shoes by firelight when his fingers no longer bend properly. Fathers are providers not emotionally, but physically. If they're kind, they're considered saints. If they're harsh, well, that's just life. Community. Family by necessity. Neighbors by survival. Your family extends beyond blood. Your neighbors are your lifeline. You help each other birth children, harvest crops, build fences, bury the dead. You gossip, argue, forgive, and work side by side. You borrow grain. You share stew. You exchange herbs, advice, and silence when needed. If someone dies, you all mourn. If someone gives birth, you all gather. If someone's house burns down, you all help rebuild. Because no one survives alone. Women's quit power. Yes, the men make the rules in theory, but women enforce them. Subtly, constantly. They teach. They discipline. They plan meals. They manage households. They pass down knowledge about herbs, about saints, about the strange rhythm of the earth. They remember birthdays no one records. They remember feuds. They remember kindnesses. They are, in truth, the village's memory. And in a world where history only records the deeds of kings and lords, the women remember everything else. And still, life goes on, despite the pain, despite the loss, despite the endless labor. There is still life. You sing lullabies to your baby. You whisper stories to your child at night. You hold your partner's hand when no one's watching. You find small joys in shared bread, in warm sunlight, in watching your child take their first steps. You live simply, brutally, honestly, and for every child that doesn't make it, for every woman who dies in childbirth, for every man who collapses in the field, someone else rises, learns, and begins again. The family endures. Because it has to, because it always has. The fields are still buzzing. You've had your break, a sip of ale, a hunk of bread, a moment to stretch your back without fear of scorn, and now it's back to labor. Again, you feel it in your knees first, then your shoulders, then the full body realization that you're expected to work like this until the sun drops behind the hills, and then do it again tomorrow. And the day after that. But the second half of the day isn't just about toil. It's about pressure. It's about social danger. And not the kind that comes with awkward small talk. This is the kind that ruins reputations, destroys families, gets people accused, punished, or vanished. Because in your world, it's not just nature that's cruel. It's people. The reeve is watching. Every village has a reeve, the local enforcer. Not a lord, not quite a peasant either, more like a school monitor with a stick, a list, and the power to ruin your month. He reports to the manor steward, and ultimately to the lord. He keeps track of who's doing their labor obligations, who's behind on their rent, who broke the cartwheel on the manor's road, and who didn't show up to mass last Sunday. He knows everything, and worse, he wants to be seen knowing everything. You keep your head down when he passes. You work harder when he's nearby. You never speak ill of him within earshot, because you've seen what happens when someone does. More work, less food, sudden fines, sometimes even a public shaming. And once people start whispering about you, it's hard to make them stop. Punishment. Quick, brutal, public. Break the rules or look like you might, and justice comes swiftly, and it doesn't not. Steal a loaf of bread? You're in the stocks by sundown. Argue with the reeve? You might get whipped in the village square. Miss your labor duties? Extra days. No pay. Public shame. The stocks are wooden frames set in the ground, holding your ankles or wrists in place. You're left there sometimes for hours, sometimes a day or more, rain or shine, with people walking past, spitting, laughing, sometimes throwing turnips. It's not just about punishing you, it's about reminding everyone else. Don't step out of line, because the line is thin and the consequences are always waiting. Land disputes. Blood in the dirt. Land is everything, and there's never enough of it. So when a boundary shifts, a fence breaks, or an ox tramples someone else's field, accusations fly. You might spend your afternoon defending your claim, arguing over a foot of pasture, or standing in front of the manor court pleading that no, you did not move that rock marker in the night. Witnesses are called. Old men recall things wrong. Someone lies. Someone else lies better. The Lord's steward shrugs and makes a ruling. It may or may not be fair. You're fined, or you're forgiven, or you're cursed by your neighbor for the rest of the year. Sometimes a knife settles the argument. Quietly, out behind the barn, never spoken of again. Petty grudges, lasting feuds. The village is small. The memories are long. That woman who took your eggs 2 winters ago, you still watch her like a hawk. That boy who stole your turnips, he's 20 now, but you've never forgotten. The family who accused your cousin of witchcraft last year, you cross the road when they pass. Forgiveness exists sometimes, but more often it's replaced with silence, simmering looks, and quiet curses muttered under breath. One wrong word, one slip of gossip, one misjudged joke, and you could find yourself ostracized. And in a village this small, isolation is lethal. The church, referee and threat. If tensions boil over, the church might intervene. The priest hears confessions, yes, but he also hears rumors. And if he thinks your sins are starting to rot the community, he might call you out publicly from the pulpit by name. He'll urge you to repent, to confess, to do penance. And if you don't, he might push for excommunication. And in a medieval village, being excommunicated is spiritual death. You can't take communion. You can't be buried in sacred ground. You are, in effect, damned while still breathing. Most people come crawling back, weeping, offering whatever they can. A chicken, a coin, a confession, not because they're sorry, but because they're scared. Women, easy targets for social rage. If someone's cow dies suddenly, if the weather turns cold, if a baby is born with a twisted limb, people start whispering. Who cursed it? Who brought the evil? Who talked to the wrong spirit or planted herbs under a new moon? And always, always the eye turns to women. Not all women, just the ones who are too old without children, too young with too much confidence, too quiet, too loud, too clever, too alone. You've seen it happen. The widow with the scar, the midwife who helped with a breech birth, the woman who knows herbs too well. Suddenly, she's a threat, a witch, a curse in a skirt. Maybe she gets away, maybe she doesn't. Either way, you learn something. Keep your head down. The Lord's distant but dangerous. You rarely see your Lord, but when you do, it's an event. He rides through the village on a horse so clean it looks imaginary. He nods. You bow. His steward shouts something. You pretend to smile. He's not cruel. He's not kind. He's something worse. Indifferent. To him, you are labor. Inventory. A row in a ledger. But if he notices, you really notices, it's never good. Maybe your land is suddenly reassigned. Maybe your daughter is suddenly chosen for service in the manor. Maybe your taxes go up and you're told it's because you looked well fed. When the powerful remember you exist, it's rarely a blessing. Conflict avoidance is a full-time job, so you keep your head down, you nod, you smile politely, you make small talk that avoids big ideas. You don't speak your mind. You don't complain, not unless you're with someone you trust more than your own reflection. You laugh at the Reeves' bad joke. You compliment your neighbor's turnips even though you saw worms in them yesterday. You attend mass. You bow your head. You pretend everything is fine because safety doesn't come from being honest. It comes from being invisible. And yet somehow there's community. But not all conflict is ugly. Sometimes disagreements are solved with bread and ale. Two people argue in the field. Later, they share a drink and laugh. A child breaks something. The neighbor fixes it. No charge. A girl accuses another of stealing berries. They're seen giggling together the next day. For all the tension, For all the fear, you still rely on each other, because the only thing worse than being poor, cold, tired, and oppressed is being alone. Night comes quickly in the Middle Ages. There are no streetlights, no electricity, no soft blue glow from a screen to push the darkness back. When the sun sets, it's gone. And the darkness that follows isn't poetic. It's total. You feel it as a weight pressing on the roof, pressing through the cracks in the wall, stretching across the floor like spilled ink, soaking up the last bits of warmth from the hearth. It's night, and now you survive it. You bar the door, carefully. There's no lock, not really, just a thick wooden bar you drop across the inside of the door, heavy enough to stop someone from pushing in, hopefully. Not that your door is particularly strong. It's made of uneven planks, bound with old rope, and swollen with years of rain. But it's something. It separates inside from outside. And that's what matters, because outside, the world is full of things you can't control. Night means danger. During the day, you fear hunger, disease, work. At night, you fear everything else. Thieves, wild dogs, wolves, bandits, spirits, ghosts, demons. All of them walk freely once the sun goes down. The village has no watchman, no night patrol. If something happens in the dark, you won't know until morning, if at all. You've heard stories. Everyone has. A traveler robbed and stabbed just beyond the tree line. A girl snatched from the edge of the woods while gathering herbs after dusk. A baby, sick and crying, who died before morning, no one knows why. Some say it was sickness. Others say something came in through the roof. The truth doesn't matter. The fear remains. The fire burns low. You dare not let it die. Your fire is everything now. Its warmth, its light, its safety. You feed it slowly, carefully, a few sticks at a time. Wood is precious. You can't afford to burn too much. If the fire goes out overnight, you're in trouble. Not just from the cold from the darkness, because darkness, in the medieval mind, isn't just the absence of light. It's the presence of evil. Things hide in it. Things wait in it. The fire flickers. The shadows dance. You stare at them just a little too long, and your imagination takes over. Was that a sound outside? Was it wind? Or something walking? Something scratching? You hold your breath. You listen. Then silence. And still, the fear lingers. Sleeping isn't safe, but it's necessary. There's no bed for everyone. Most sleep on straw, side by side, layered like firewood under a shared woolen blanket. Children lie at the edges, parents near the fire. A goat, maybe, curled at someone's feet for warmth. You try to sleep, but the floor is cold. Your hip digs into the earth. The air smells of smoke, sweat, and feet, and the baby is coughing again, softly, repetitively. Your eyes sting, your throat is dry, your mind won't quiet. Night brings thoughts you can't face during the day. During the day, you move too fast to think, but at night, there's time. Time to remember the child you lost last spring. Time to replay that argument you had with your sister. Time to wonder if this cough in your chest is the same one that killed your neighbor. Time to imagine what death feels like, and whether your soul is truly ready. You pray, quietly, not out of ritual, but out of real, visceral need. Please let me wake up tomorrow. Please protect my family. Please forgive me for what I said about the reeve. You fall asleep clutching your cross, or a charm, or a stone someone told you was sacred, because you need something, anything. The night is long. You wake several times to cough, to shift, to pee outside a terrifying task that involves stepping barefoot into the freezing dark, praying nothing's watching. Sometimes you hear things, a scream in the distance, a howl, the thud of something falling, footsteps. Maybe, maybe not. You pull the blanket tighter. You press yourself against the others. You stare into the blackness. You hope morning come. For some, it doesn't. Not everyone wakes up. You hear it at dawn, a soft wail from another hut. A woman sobbing, a man shouting, a priest called in a hurry. Someone passed in the night. A child, an elder, a neighbor. No warning, no ceremony, just gone. You offer to help with the body. You bring water. You say a prayer. And then you return home, quietly, trying not to look at your own children as if they might vanish too. You dream of things you don't understand. If you're lucky enough to truly sleep, the dreams come, strange ones, of fire and shadow, of voices calling your name, of people long dead, sometimes of saints, sometimes of something else. You wake with your heart pounding. You don't tell anyone. Dreams can be omen, and if they sound too strange, too dark, too unnatural, someone might think you've seen something you shouldn't have. You pray harder next time, just in case. The fear never fully leaves. Even in daylight, a piece of the night follows you, a shadow clinging to your thoughts, a chill in the back of your neck, the memory of a sound you never explained. You tell yourself it's nothing, but you still whisper, "God protect us," before every sleep. Because deep down, you know, the daytime may be cruel, but the night is something worse. It's when you remember that the world is fragile, that your body is weak, that your home is just sticks and straw, that your fire is all that stands between you and the dark. The fire is down to embers. The stew pot is scraped clean. The children are asleep, curled into one another like a litter of puppies. Someone is snoring softly. Someone else is coughing. Outside, the wind carries the faint howl of something wild. But inside your small home, there's silence. Peace, not from comfort, but from exhaustion. You've done everything you were supposed to do today. You labor it. You obey it. You endure it. And somehow, through all of it, you're still breathing. And in this world, this cold, damp, scratchy world, that alone is a miracle. This life was never meant to be easy. No one writes songs about peasants. No statues are carved in your image. No books are passed down from your point of view. But here, tonight, as we lie back and breathe slow, it's worth remembering something. Your life may be forgotten by history, but it was never insignificant. You were the one who grew the food that fed the kingdom, who mended the tools, who kept the fire going, who birthed the children, who carried the pain, who knelt in the dirt and rose again every morning without fail. You didn't ask for wealth. You didn't expect rest. All you wanted was to make it to tomorrow, and somehow you did. It was harsh, yes, but it was also real. This life, this brutal, muddy, painful existence was full of contradictions. The stew was bland, but the laughter around the fire was real. The roof leaked, but the home still held. The work was crushing, but the joy in your child's face when they caught a frog in the field, that was everything. You didn't get luxuries, but you found small pleasures in warm bread, in soft wool, in a moment of stillness when the sky turned red at dusk. There was beauty, even here, even in the dirt, gratitude in the present. Now, as you lie in your soft bed, the real one, in the present, maybe with your own blanket pulled high, maybe with a fan humming gently, or a cup of tea cooling beside you, it's okay to feel grateful. Grateful for soap, for central heating, for antibiotics, for clean water that doesn't have to be boiled 3 times and strained through a cloth, for light that doesn't flicker when the wind blows. Grateful for a life where you don't have to kneel in a freezing field just to earn a sliver of bread. You're not lazy for appreciating modern comforts. You're just human. And humans, we forget how much was endured before us, how much hardship, silence, struggle, and suffering brought us to this moment of stillness. Let it fade now. As you lie here, breathing slow, your muscles relaxing, your thoughts drifting. You don't have to hold onto the ache of history anymore. You walked through the day as a medieval peasant. You felt the cold, the itch, the hunger, the hopelessness. But now it's time to let it go. Let the sound of the Reeves' voice fade. Let the weight of the pottage bowl disappear. Let the stink of the hut dissolve into memory. You're not there anymore. You're here. Warm, safe, fed. A final thought before sleep. The peasants didn't get lullabies. They didn't get goodnight kisses or bedtime stories. They got silence, or, more often, the sound of someone coughing into the straw. But you get this. A soft voice, a long story. A reminder that you're lucky to be alive, not just now, but now. You're lucky to sleep in a world where the night doesn't kill you, and the morning doesn't promise more suffering. You're lucky to live in a time where rest is allowed, where comfort is possible, where history can be studied, not survived. So tonight, as you drift off, remember the calloused hands, the smoke-blackened walls, the crying infants, and crumbling teeth, and silent prayers muttered in straw beds. Remember how hard it was, how long the nights felt, how short the lives often were. And then remember, you don't have to wake up in 1347. You don't have to scrub your hands with ashes. You don't have to fear demons behind the door. You don't have to boil barley in muddy water just to eat something warm. You're here, now, and you're okay. Sleep well, my friend. Let your breath slow. Let your muscles sink. Let the weight of centuries fall off your shoulders, because you've walked through the harsh truth of medieval peasant life, and you've made it back. So tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in the Middle Ages. Sleep well,